My name is Eliza Rowan. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my adult life, I've been the kind of person people forget to ask about. Not because I vanished. I was always there at the dinners, the birthdays, the hospital visits. Smiling, present, useful, just not impressive. At least not by my family's standards. They liked their success visible. Something you could frame on a wall or salute at a podium. My siblings fit the mold, one in uniform, one in public policy, both easy to brag about. Me, I worked in systems no one could pronounce and signed NDAs that outlived friendships. To them, I was the one who worked from home. The deadbeat in nice clothes. And I never corrected them. Not once. Until the night my sister's husband, Commander Marcus Wynne, walked into a room full of people who thought I was invisible and saluted me, formally, loudly, like I'd earned it. Because I had. There was always a quiet hierarchy in my family, though no one ever spoke of it outright. It lived in the way our parents introduced us at gatherings, in how they framed photos on the mantel, whose degrees made it to the hallway, whose promotions became centerpieces at dinner. My father retired after 23 years in the Navy, still wore his military blazer to every formal occasion. He had a way of standing with his arms crossed, not as a defense, but like someone who'd already decided who was worth his attention. My mother, a former school principal, didn't smile often, but when she did, it was always reserved for someone who reminded her of herself. Polished, orderly, ready with answers. Luke, my younger brother, joined the police force at 20 and never took off the badge. He wasn't particularly brilliant, but he fit the narrative. Square jaw, firm handshake, rehearsed authority. They adored him. Dad called him solid. Mom said he made her feel safe. Talia, our youngest, was born with the instincts of a diplomat. Straight A's, student body, president model, UN. She got a full ride to Georgetown, married a Navy officer with an impeccable record, and now worked in foreign affairs. Every move she made was curated precise. She never raised her voice, never wore anything without a belt, never walked into a room without checking her posture. And then there was me. I studied computer science and engineering, skipped the Ivy League for a boutique cybersecurity firm, then transitioned to black contract defense work before I turned 30. I worked on threat simulations, critical infrastructure audits, secure communication stuff that came with clearance levels and little public footprint. I briefed federal groups. I wrote protocol that kept things from breaking in the first place. But none of that looked good on a holiday card. When I said consulting, they heard nothing serious. When I said federal contract, they heard unemployed. Once my mother asked if I'd ever considered going back to school to get a real specialization. I just smiled. There was no explaining a job you weren't allowed to talk about. They didn't mock me openly, not at first. It was more a soft erosion, like being written out of your own family's story, 1 year at a time. At the Thanksgiving table, they asked Luke about his precinct and Talia about embassy rotations. When it came to me, there was usually just a refill of wine. Sometimes I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't in this life for applause. But the truth was, it chipped at something. Quietly, consistently. And eventually, that silence became the story they believed. I didn't realize how much I'd taken on until I started listing it in my head one night while staring at the ceiling fan. When Luke got pulled over for a DUI, 2 counties over it was me who sent the bail money quietly, electronically, before our parents even checked their voicemails. No one thanked me. 2 weeks later, he posted a selfie in uniform with the caption, "Grind never stops." I didn't like the post. I didn't comment. I just watched the algorithm swallow the truth. When Talia had a panic attack during her final semester of grad school, while Marcus was overseas, she called crying at midnight, asking if I could help her rewrite 2 papers she hadn't even started. I cleared my schedule and stayed up 3 nights in a row. She graduated with distinction and gave a speech about the power of resilience. My name wasn't mentioned. When Mom needed a cardiac procedure her insurance wouldn't cover, she called me in tears for the first time in maybe a decade. I was already opening my banking app before she finished her sentence. I told her not to worry that I had it handled. She never brought it up again. But she did send Luke a framed photo of her recovery. He posted it with the caption, "Glad I could be there for her." I didn't do these things because I wanted credit. I did them because I could. Because they were family. Because for reasons I still don't fully understand, I believed that love meant showing up even when no one noticed. But they didn't just overlook me. They redefined me. I wasn't a systems analyst, or a threat auditor, or a defense contractor. I was the helpful one. The one with time on her hands. The one they didn't have to introduce properly. They built a version of me that served their comfort. Easy to mock, easy to minimize, easy to forget. Sometimes I wondered if they truly didn't know how much I was carrying. Other times, I wondered if they knew and just preferred the myth. The story where I was the aimless sister who wore nice clothes and helped out with tech stuff. It made their success look shinier by comparison. Still, I kept showing up. To birthdays, baby showers, holiday dinners. I brought gifts. I asked about their jobs. I laughed in the right places. And when someone made a casual joke about how some of us actually work for a living, I swallowed it whole and changed the subject. I thought that was strength. I told myself silence was grace. But silence has a weight. It gathers. And one day you look up and realize it's pressing the air out of your lungs. I started noticing the edits in small ways first. A missing group photo. A conversation I wasn't looped into. A casual reference to just the three of us kids from my mother at brunch, said so easily I almost thought I'd misheard. I hadn't. When Talia threw her bridal shower, I wasn't invited. The excuse was that it was just friends. I saw the pictures later, cousins, neighbors, her entire office team, and Marcus in uniform making a toast. I'd sent her a custom gift anyway, something quiet and practical. She never acknowledged it. When Luke was promoted to sergeant, there was a full cookout. Banners, speeches, photo booth. He took the mic and thanked everyone who believed in him, naming Dad, Mom Talia, and even his old football coach. I stood at the back near the recycling bin, clutching a half-empty plastic cup. He didn't look at me once. That night, I drove home with both windows down, hoping the cold air would clear the pressure in my chest. It didn't. And then came the dinner. Dad's birthday. I got the invite 2 days before it had been sent to an old email. Mom said it was a mix-up. I arrived on time anyway, gift in hand, dressed with care. They seated me at the far end of the table, beside a cousin I hadn't seen since high school. At some point during the meal, Luke leaned over and asked loud enough for others to hear, "So still working from your couch? Or is that top secret too?" A few people chuckled. No one stopped him, not even Marcus, not even Talia. I didn't answer. I took a sip of my drink and watched them keep talking like I wasn't there. That's when I realized it wasn't just a phase or a misunderstanding. They'd rewritten me entirely, trimmed me out of the family narrative like I was a footnote they no longer needed. And worse, I had let them. They didn't see me because I kept stepping back, kept making room, kept choosing peace over clarity. But peace built on erasure doesn't last. And something in me, after all those dinners and dismissed moments, began to stir. Not anger. Something colder. Quieter, resolve. The invitation wasn't meant for me. I got it by mistake an email from a catering service confirming headcount for Captain Wynn's promotion dinner. The message was addressed to someone else, a co-worker of Talia's, with a similar name. I stared at it for a full minute before it clicked. There was going to be a formal dinner for Marcus, and I wasn't on the list. No surprise, really. I hadn't been invited to Talia's baby shower either, or the housewarming, or the Christmas Eve brunch, 2 years in a row. Each time they had reasons: wrong address, short notice, limited space. But this time it was deliberate, clean, silent. I didn't reply to the caterer. I didn't text Talia. I didn't ask why. That Saturday, while they dressed in tailored outfits and posed beside flags and plaques, I sat at my kitchen counter, still in my hoodie, reviewing a classified report on cybersecurity vulnerabilities in naval communications, protocols, systems Marcus and his unit would eventually use. The irony was almost funny. When the photos surfaced online 2 days later, I let myself look. Marcus in full uniform. Talia in a sharp navy dress standing just close enough for the headlines. My parents on either side of them, all beaming like a magazine cover. Luke in the back, red plastic cup, in hand, already mid-toast. The caption read, "Proud night for the family. Captain Win honor courage commitment." There was no mention of me. I should have been used to it by then. But something about that particular erasure, so complete, so polished, made it settle differently in my chest. It wasn't just exclusion. It was deliberate narrative control. They weren't just forgetting me. They were editing me out. And the strange part was, it didn't break me. It didn't even hurt the same way anymore. It felt clinical, like reading a report about yourself in the third person. I closed my laptop and sat in silence, not angry, not sad, just still. That's when I knew something had shifted. They could pretend I didn't matter. But reality had teeth, and it was getting ready to bite back. Talia's birthday dinner was held at a private banquet hall just outside the city, polished floors. Gold centerpieces, the kind of lighting that made everything look more expensive than it was. The invitation came 2 days before the event again, via group text. This time, at least, my name was on it. I almost didn't go. I had a deadline, a deliverable for a federal client, with no margin for delay. But something in me, it wasn't curiosity, wasn't pride, something colder, sharper said, go. I arrived early, parked in the back corner, wore black. Simple sharp. No jewelry, no explanations. Inside the room was already humming. I spotted Mom, first moving between tables like a host at a fundraiser. She saw me, blinked once, then walked over with a tight smile. "You made it," she said like it was unexpected. "Just don't make this about you, okay? It's her night." Then came Luke. "Well, look who got out of her apartment," he said, drink already in hand. Deadbeat made it after all. A few heads turned, a few smirks followed. No one corrected him. Not even Talia. I didn't respond. Just found a seat near the back, near the wall, where I could blend into the blur of military jackets and curated success stories. Dinner started. People laughed. Toasts were made. I ate in silence. Then the door opened. Marcus stepped in, dress whites, gold trim ribbons, in perfect formation. He scanned the room, once then his eyes found mine. And he stopped. He didn't go to the head table. He didn't greet the crowd. He walked slow, deliberate toward the back. Toward me. Conversations quieted. When he reached my table, he stopped just short of where I sat. And saluted. Clean. Textbook. Formal. "Ma'am," he said loud enough to carry. A fork clinked. Someone inhaled sharply. My father stared frozen. Talia's smile cracked at the edges. I stood slowly, returned the salute with a nod. "Lieutenant Commander." His voice dropped. "Didn't think I'd see you here." Neither did I. He gestured to the seat beside me. "May I?" I nodded. And just like that, the entire room tilted. They didn't know who I was. But suddenly, they knew I wasn't who they thought. No one said a word for a full minute after Marcus sat down. Conversations resumed eventually, but quieter. Stilted. People glanced over and quickly looked away. The noise in the room had shifted, less laughter, more whispers behind napkins. Talia came over with a slice of composure too carefully arranged. She placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder like she was claiming him back. "You made it," she said. Marcus didn't rise. "Wouldn't miss it," he replied, eyes still forward. She didn't look at me, just squeezed his shoulder and returned to the head table. My parents didn't speak to me the rest of the night. My mother avoided my eyes completely. My father didn't even pretend to mask his confusion. He looked like he was trying to solve an equation that suddenly didn't work. Luke kept glancing our way. That swagger of his, so practiced, so performative, had drained from his posture. He made a joke about the cake being dry, like government work, but no one laughed. Not this time. Marcus didn't explain the salute. He didn't have to. His presence beside me did all the talking. When dessert was served, I stayed seated while people moved around me in a kind of quiet recalibration. I felt none of the weight I used to carry at these events. No need to prove, no urge to shrink, just stillness. I left before the cake was cut. Walked out alone, no coat over my dress, the night air sharp against my arms. The parking lot was nearly empty. I got in my car and sat for a while, not crying, not shaking, just breathing, because for the first time in years I'd been seen, not explained, not defended, just recognized. And the ones who'd built an entire mythology around my invisibility, they didn't know what to do with it. Later that week, a text from Talia arrived. No greeting, just a line. "What exactly do you do?" I stared at it for a long time. Then I locked my phone, slid it across the table, and kept eating my dinner. She wasn't ready for the answer, and I wasn't offering it anymore. The texts kept coming after that. Talia sent another, a few days later. "Adam won't tell me, but I think I messed up. Just, if you ever want to talk." It wasn't an apology, not really, but it wasn't a deflection either. I read it twice, then deleted it. Not out of spite, just clarity. I'd spent years adjusting myself to fit their comfort, dimming my own light so no one else had to squint, laughing when they made jokes, helping when they didn't ask, showing up even when I wasn't welcome. That night, after Marcus saluted me, something broke loose. Not in anger, in understanding. I had let them believe I was small because it made things easier. I had made room, stayed quiet, avoided confrontation, all so they could stay unchallenged in their version of me. But silence is a kind of permission, and I was done granting it. The next invitation came for Easter brunch. Group text. Mom added a winking emoji and signed it "From the real adults." Like it was all a joke. Like I hadn't spent 10 years underwriting their disasters while they called me unemployed. I didn't respond. 3 days later, Talia followed up, "Hope you can come. It'd be nice to move past everything." I locked my phone again, because I wasn't interested in moving past things they refused to name. That Sunday, I took a walk through the old part of town, past the river trail and the aging federal complex, where I'd once submitted my first full threat response protocol. The building had no sign, no flag, just 3 armed guards and reinforced glass. No one knew what happened inside, but I did. That was the difference. Recognition didn't have to come with applause, or explanations, or family photos. Sometimes it came in the way someone dropped their fork, the way a room went still, the way a man in uniform looked you in the eye and said without needing to spell it out, "I know who you are." And in that moment, everyone else had to confront what they'd spent years pretending wasn't there. The truth. I never explained the salute. Not to my colleagues. Not to the junior analyst who once asked if I ever felt invisible. Not to Talia. Not to my mother when she left a voicemail days later, asking if things had gone too far. I listened to the message once, then deleted it, because it wasn't the point anymore. Months passed. The family thread stayed quiet, until a cousin reached out, just a photo from another cookout, another toast. Luke at the grill. Dad making a speech. No mention of me, of course. But then she added, "Marcus shut down a joke. Said you do real work." Nobody had anything to say after that. I read it twice and didn't respond. Not out of anger, just certainty. For years, I'd let them narrate me in a way that made them feel bigger, quieter, simpler. I played along thinking love meant letting them be comfortable. But comfort built on erasure isn't love. It's containment. That night in the banquet hall, when Marcus saluted me in front of everyone, he didn't give me power. He recognized it. And that moment didn't need to be explained. It stood on its own. Now I don't show up where I'm tolerated. I don't explain myself in rooms that never asked real questions. I've stopped trying to belong in places that benefit from me being small. My life is quiet, not invisible, full. With systems I hold together, teams who trust me, and silence that no longer takes something from me. Some legacies are whispered, some are witnessed, and some walk into the room, lift a hand, and say nothing at all except "ma'am."